I'm filming on my phone because my camera, all of my batteries are dead, and I'm just being lazy and not wanting to wait to recharge them. Hello everybody, welcome to another video. I am refilming this because the first time I filmed it I wasn't really happy with it, so I wanted to redo it. Alright, this is my official first trimester pregnancy update video. If you are watching and you don't watch my normal weekly vlogs that I post every Sunday, then you may not know that I am pregnant with my first baby. And I'm very excited about it. I wanted to do these type of update videos so that I could have them to look back on, so that friends and family could have them to see and kind of keep up with me throughout my journey. This is covering the first 3 months of my pregnancy. As I am filming this, I am 4 months and 2 days pregnant, so I am a little past my first trimester, which is fine. I wanted to go through and kind of tell you how I found out that I was pregnant, how I told Dan and my mom and my family, and then also how I told just kind of like the general public any of the symptoms that I've had so far, any sort of scares that I've had so far, and then answering just a couple of the basic questions like, are we gonna find out the gender? What are we gonna name the baby? When's my due date? All that fun stuff. So I thought I'd cover all of that in this video. So starting off, I found out I was pregnant by, Dan and I have been married for a little over 5 years. And during the course of the majority of those 5 years, I have been on birth control. This was a choice that we made because he was going to school. We knew it would not be wise to try to have kids while he was going to school because financially we were not in a place where that would be a good idea. There was already a lot of stress related to schooling, and both of us had to work full time, so we would not be able to afford a child. So I found a birth control that I liked, that I agreed with the methods of the controlling the birth, and we got onto that, and that's what we had been on. Since moving back, we had gotten off of the birth control because we decided if God wants us to have a baby, we're gonna have a baby. So we're not gonna actively try against it anymore. Got off the birth control. About 2 months later, I missed my period, and I was about 5 days past when my period was supposed to start, which anybody watching this who I'm not close friends with and have already told this might be TMI, and I apologize. This is pregnancy, so I was 5 days late for my period, and I thought, okay, I don't necessarily think this is my body trying to re-regulate into a normal habit. I think I might be pregnant. So I went to the store, got a pregnancy test, brought it home, took it, and I was very much pregnant. So I was very excited. I wasn't super shocked because I had been thinking about it for a few days before going and getting this test. So I was a little more just like confirming what I was already suspecting. I told Dan. I did not record us telling anybody. I thought about doing that, but I know Dan is not really into any of that, so I already knew I really wasn't going to record his reaction at all. So I told Dan. He was very excited. He was pretty stunned.
And stunned. Yeah, stunned. Very stunned.
But he was very excited. It was cute. And then my mom got home later that day. Dan had to go to work. I told her. She immediately began bawling, which made me cry, and so that was very exciting. I think the very next day we called Dan's parents and told them over the phone. And then I think shortly after that we sent a text to all of his brothers and sisters and just letting them know. And then I was holding off on telling my sisters because I really wanted to tell them in person. And I ended up waiting, I think, over a week after we had told all of Dan's family because I wanted to tell them in person. and schedule conflicts just kept coming up that it didn't work out that I could tell them in person. And I'm like, I don't want to keep waiting to tell them. So finally I just caved and I sent them each a text message. And they both called me and they were like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And I'm like, I know. So it wasn't an ideal way, but I mean, big whoop-de-doo. So some people are really adamant about telling people a certain way and being told a certain way, and you're gonna find out either way. Like, it's okay. So that was like mid-October that all of this transpired when I found out, and I was about 4 or 5 weeks pregnant at that point when I found out. I had called the doctor that I'm going to, had scheduled an appointment to, start being seen and to go there, and got all that scheduled. I still had like 2 weeks before that appointment. But yeah, so that was basically how we told everybody. It was very, very simple, kind of anticlimactic. Again, I didn't really want to film all of it and make it a video thing. I thought about doing that and I decided against it because I don't want to use my baby for views. So I don't want to. Doing YouTube videos, you learn what gets views, and telling people you're pregnant and seeing their reactions, those videos get a lot of views. And I didn't want to make that type of video for views and to exploit my baby like that. So that's why I decided not to film anything. I might do a gender reveal video, maybe. I don't know, like Dan and I might already know, but it might just be like a fun gender reveal for my channel, maybe? I don't know. We'll see. If we're going chronologically, I have my little notes here off to the side. And the next thing that happened was my next little line. It was like, did you have any issues while you were pregnant? Any scares? And yeah, I did. I had a nice scary scare. So for those of you who don't know, when you're pregnant, sometimes you can have some light spotting of blood, and that can be normal. And I was aware of that. I knew that that was something that might happen, but I had one day, it was November 4th. I went back and looked. It was on November 4th. I had one day that I had some bleeding that was not light, and it really scared me. And because I didn't know that that could still be normal, which I now know what had happened is normal, or is common anyway, because I didn't know that at the time, I was really scared, and Dan and I ended up going to the emergency room for it because I thought I was potentially having a miscarriage. So we went to the emergency room, and I had called my doctor beforehand and told them what was going on, and they were like, okay, we suggest you go to the emergency room, because they didn't have anything that I could get in there. It was after hours. So they suggested we go to the emergency room. So we went. They did the basic, they checked me in, they did blood tests, they had me do a urine sample, then they had us go to the ultrasound to have an ultrasound done to see what was going on. And I can talk about this a lot more calmly now, but at the time, I was terrified. As the moments passed, I was more convinced that I was having a miscarriage and losing my baby, and it was terrifying, and I was doing everything in my power not to start bawling in front of all of these strangers, because I don't like doing that. So Dan was being a rock for me, which I needed. They had us go in to the ultrasound room to have an ultrasound done to check, and they had told me, they said, we're gonna have you go and we're gonna have you do an ultrasound, and regardless of if baby is okay or isn't okay, we want to have the ultrasound so we can see what's going on. So we went to the ultrasound room, and sure enough, baby was totally fine, which I was very thankful for. Tears definitely started flowing down my facial region when I was told that. At that point, I was 6 weeks. They were able to do measurements and everything. They said baby looked great. These are the ultrasound pictures that I have. So this is what a 6-week-old baby looks like. It's little tiny little tiny right there. There's my uterus. And this is the heartbeat going along right there. So very, very exciting. So everything ended up being fine. I found out at my regularly scheduled appointment with my doctor exactly what had gone on. And apparently it is something that's pretty common among pregnancies, where this is a very, very simplified version. And there is a correct term for this that I don't remember. So don't go calling your doctor and saying this random person on the internet told you this. This is just what I was told. Disclaimers. Basically what they told me was that here is your uterus. When you become pregnant and the baby is implanted, the egg is implanted, and it starts forming basically like the uterus, you get like the sac and everything that's there. And as the lining is forming, there can sometimes be a little section where it doesn't quite connect to the full wall. So it leaves this little like pouch right there. And that pouch has blood in it. And sometimes that can drain. And so they said that that's what happened. So they said that that is normal, that majority of the time that little pouch drains and that's it. They said sometimes that can become fatal for the baby, but that's not something that happens as often. So that's what that bleeding scare was for me, which I'm very glad that I know that now. I'm very glad that I am aware of that, because that was something I did not know. I didn't know that that was common, and so it really scared me. That's what that was. Everything is fine now. That is not an issue anymore, which is fantastic, but that was my fun little first trimester scare. And Dan and I were very adamant. We did not tell anybody that we were pregnant until toward the very end of my first trimester, because we wanted to make sure that there were not any potential further scares that were going to happen. And I knew that I would not be able to mentally or emotionally handle telling people I was pregnant and then something horrible happening and having to go back and tell people that I was no longer pregnant. So I was very adamant about not telling people. And as it got closer to the time that we could tell, Dan was definitely getting more antsy because he really wanted to tell people. He was very excited at this point, which was very cute. And I had a couple of friends who were like, yeah, Dan, the way he was talking, I kind of started guessing it, but I wasn't gonna say anything. So Dan's over here thinking he's being all smooth, and he's definitely not being smooth at all. So, but yeah, so we told the general public, which was basically just anybody except our immediate family who we had told prior. We just posted a picture on Facebook. This is the picture that we posted. Very, very cute. As far as just generalized pregnancy symptoms that I've had so far, nothing too bad. Nausea hasn't been bad. I haven't really had any of the stereotypical morning sickness, but I haven't really had a ton of nausea. I've had kind of waves of nausea in and out throughout the days, but it's not been anything severe enough that I actually throw up. It's just been mild not feeling good and not really wanting to move that much, which ties in with all of the fatigue that I was having. My body was doing a lot these first 3 months, and as a result, I had no energy. There were days I did absolutely nothing just because I didn't have the oomph to do things. The biggest 2 symptoms that I've had throughout the first trimester is my gag reflex being so sensitive. I can't wear shirts, even still today. Like, I'm 4 months pregnant as I'm filming this, and even still, if clothes or my hair or a coat or something gets too close around my neck, I feel like I am going to choke and throw up. And it's awful. So I have to be so careful about that. The first time I filmed this, I was like messing with my collar while I explained that, and it actually triggered it, and I had to like take a second to recompose myself before I could continue filming. Like, that's how intense it is. And I had to go like this just so I can breathe. Gosh, even just playing with it right there was like making me be like, bleh. My gag reflex has been really bad. A lot of people that I've talked to about it have said, oh yeah, brushing my teeth was horrible. And brushing my teeth hasn't bugged me at all. But flossing, especially when I need to floss my molars, is awful. I have decided that I am picking and choosing when I floss, because if I wake up and I don't feel really great, I'm not going to floss, because more likely than not, I'm going to make myself sick. And that just makes me feel like poo for 3 hours. I've been picking and choosing when I'm flossing, which my dentist is not going to be thrilled about. The other big symptom that I've had, I have not had any cravings to date, which I'm hoping I do have. I kind of really want to experience that, but I've not yet. So I've not had any food cravings or anything like that yet. I have only had one serious food aversion, and that is actually not food, it's a drink, and that is coffee. There was a 3 to 4 week span of time where I did not drink any coffee because the thought of drinking it made me want to vomit. So I had to be very careful in the mornings when Dan was having a cup of coffee. Like, if I looked at him drinking his cup of coffee, or if I could smell his coffee, it didn't bother me that much. What bothered me was when I myself thought about me drinking that coffee. That's when I wanted to throw up. It was strange because I thought for sure the smell of it would trigger it, or watching Dan drink coffee would trigger it. And no, those really didn't. But if I was smelling it and I thought about tasting it, then I wanted to throw up. Or if I was watching Dan drink it and I thought about drinking it myself, that would trigger it. So that happened. Luckily, that is past. I still don't drink a lot of coffee anyway. I do have a little bit of caffeine every day, but my doctor said that like one regular, like 12-ounce amount of caffeine a day is okay, just to not exceed that, which is fine, because any more caffeine than that and I give myself a headache. There was one day that it was a Sunday, Dan and I were coming home from church, and as we were driving home, I was like, I've actually felt really good the last few days. Like, coffee's not been bothering me at all. Like, thinking about it hasn't bugged me. So I told Dan, I said, Dan, I think when we get home, I might want you to make me a cup of coffee. He'll make me like these special cups of coffee every once in a while. If you follow my Instagram, you'll see some of the like fancy dessert style cups of coffee that he makes me, and they are delicious and amazing. So that's kind of what I was thinking of. And I was like, I don't want any coffee right now, but I might want a cup later. And I had to stop mid-sentence because the thought of having coffee, like, and we were driving, so I was sitting in the passenger seat and the car was moving, and I had to stop talking mid-sentence and just put my head down and close my eyes, and it took a solid 5 minutes of intense focus for me to not ask Dan to pull the car over so I could throw up. It was so bad. That was the closest that coffee ever brought me to throwing up. But so that was really funny. That was something that I like telling people when they're like, oh, have you had any aversions, any cravings or anything? I like telling that story because that's hilarious in my brain. As far as that goes, that's about it. The nausea that I had, again, didn't really affect me that badly. There was a couple of days, it did not last long at all, but there was a couple of days where I would be eating a meal and I would have to be very deliberate with each bite that I took because I would not feel good at all. And there was one evening I was sitting at the table, actually just right over there, and Dan was sitting next to me and we were eating, and I was sitting like this, like just leaning against it, like I did not feel good at all. And taking a bite and eating it so slowly and swallowing and then waiting and then taking another bite and eating it so slowly and then going to get another bite and putting it back down and waiting a few more minutes and then taking it and chewing it so slowly. And so Dan asked if I was okay. I basically had to explain to him, hello, I'm currently filming.
Oh, okay.
It's okay, just so you...
Family.
It's for the 1 month, or the first trimester update video.
Hi. I was involved in this too, you know.
That part, yeah.
Okay.
I basically had to explain to him what was going on in my body at that moment. So I boiled it down to sort of an analogy related to like the Wheel of Fortune, if you've ever seen that show, where you're standing there and you have this big wheel with all of these different pegs and all of these different slots that you could land on, and you spin it and it just goes and goes and goes and then it lands on something. My stomach was kind of like that, where every time I took a bite of food, I would spin this great big wheel. But instead of there being like 40 different options it could land on, there was only 3 options. Either it would land on that bite of food was fine and I could eat it and all was well in the world, or it would land on eat this really slowly and you're in the danger zone of potentially throwing up, or it would land on the bankrupt piece of you just lost all of that meal you just ate. But the problem was, every time I would spin the wheel, all of the percentages of what each one of those were changed. I would spin it once and there would be a 5% chance of throwing up, a 75% chance of it being a dangerous potential throw-up bite, and a 20% chance of it being fine. And then the next time I would spin it, it would be all different percentages. But the really fun part was that a lot of times, as I would spin it, those percentages would be changing as it spun. So it was really just a guessing game at that point. But that was the analogy I was able to use to kind of help explain to Dan what was going on in my stomach and my brain with every bite of food that I took. So that was also fun. I'm very glad that that portion only lasted, I think, like 3 days maximum. It did not last very long at all. I'm very glad about that. But as far as symptoms, scares, telling people, that was basically it. It was a rather uneventful, well, mostly uneventful first trimester, which I'm totally fine with. A lot of questions that we've been getting include, are we gonna find out the gender? Yes, we have that scheduled for the end of February, that we're gonna go and find out what gender we are having. People have asked if we've thought about names. Yes, we have thought about names. We are not giving it any serious thought until we know what the gender is, and then we are not going to talk about names with people really at all until we have decided on a name, because I'm not huge on getting outside influences on name suggestions. And I don't want to throw out ideas that I have and then people start critiquing the names for whatever reason. Like, this is our choice, so we are going to make it and then just tell you what we've decided and not really ask for opinions. My due date, I actually never mentioned that I am due June 28th. So I almost said July, which is not correct. June 28th is when I am due. I'm planning on doing this video, a second trimester, and a third trimester. I might do a birth vlog, I might not. I might just do a sit-down video like this explaining how the birth went. That's still to be determined. I don't know for sure yet. Oh, and I had showed you those 6-week, when I went to the emergency room, those ultrasound pictures. These are the pictures from my 9-week appointment. So it was actually about 3 weeks later that I had my regular scheduled ultrasound to get my definite due date. And these are what those pictures look like. And you can see little arms and legs forming already, and the head and the body, and so cute. So that is what those look like. Very, very happy with the baby so far. But yeah, that is basically it for the entirety of the first trimester. If you have any more questions of things you're curious about that I might not have addressed here regarding first trimester, we're not talking second trimester or where I am currently at like this very moment in time yet or anything, but just about the first trimester, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will try to answer them as best as I can. And if there's enough of them, I might just make a whole separate pregnancy Q&A video, because I'm an expert, apparently. No. Dan even just laughed from the other room. That's about it. I'm very excited. Dan's very excited. Family's very excited. Friends are very excited. Yeah, I hope you guys have had a great day, and I hope you have a great day. He'll make me like these special cups of coffee every once in a while. If you follow my Instagram, you will see them. Link in the description if you want to follow that. That's awful. I'm cutting that. That's gross. I didn't know how to end the last taping of this that I did, and I don't know how to end this one either. So if you don't want to get pregnant, don't drink the water.